Welcome back into OneSoccer today. Iain Hume joining us now as we turn our attention to the Canadian men's team. How you doing, Hume?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Looking forward to tomorrow night.
I know. Well, we're going to pick your brain a little bit here because we know Steven Vittoria missed their last game because of yellow card accumulation. He will be available to John Herdman for that game against Panama. But given the way Daniil Henry also played against Jamaica, I want you to choose, though. Who is playing in that position for you against Panama? Are you going Vittoria or are you going Daniil?
I think I'll go along the same lines. I think John will go. He'll stick with Vittoria. Steve's been brilliant for him in every game he's played. In fairness to Daniil, he was great against Jamaica, but I know what I'm guessing I know what John's thinking, and he'll go back with the tried and trusted.
Yeah, I think you've got two good options, right? Like, you've got a player in Daniil Henry who can take those kind of more physical matchups, and we saw that, against Nicholson with Jamaica. Massive player, really good in the air. Daniil Henry was able to pretty much handle that. I think Hume's right. In this kind of game, you want Steven Vittoria, maybe a bit more calmness, a bit more comfort on the ball. Gives you someone who can play out and build those attacks in a game that I think Canada are going to be dominating. So I agree with him on that one. Going to the other end of the pitch, though, Iain, Jonathan David, obviously we're going to start talking about him when he doesn't score goals, goes just a couple of games without scoring a goal. As a striker yourself, what are you seeing there? Is it, the team not getting him involved enough? Can he do more? Is it a tactical thing? What do you think is maybe holding him back a bit at the minute?
To be honest, against Jamaica, he just looked tired. I don't know what it was. He just didn't look sharp. Listen, it's rich for me to talk about somebody who's playing Champions League and winning leagues all over France and everything, but
it doesn't stop me.
He just didn't look himself. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's the problem. We expect. Like, when you've got him and Alfonso playing together, you expect them to create chances. And even going as far as Alfonso wasn't overly impressive the other day. He tried too much rather than just doing what we see every week for him with Bayern. But with Jonathan David, we know he can score goals. He needs one and he'll start scoring again. He's not in bad form back in France. So we'll just put it down as a blip, I think. I think Jamaica was one of those he'll sweep under the rug and move on to Panama.
Do you think he plays better with a strike partner? We see him play with Yilmaz, who's a real target man at Lille. Could someone like Cavallini or Kyle Larin, if he's available, help, do you think?
Of course, because they're naturally going to get forward more and they've got more pace. And no disrespect to Oso or anybody who plays up with him, like Waterspoon when he came on the other day. They don't give that other option in behind as well. So if Jonathan David does come short, they're not going to go the other way. And I think he missed that. Okay, the surface wasn't great. It was humid. It was hot. But like I said, there's an expectation level. And when he hasn't got somebody around there who's a good foil for him, maybe he gets exposed a bit too much and left alone. I think that was the case a lot against Jamaica. He had to do a lot of things on his own if and when the ball came near him, which wasn't often enough for my liking. But you put somebody in there, even if it's a junior Hoylett, somebody who's naturally an attacker, he's naturally going to want to get forward. I think that's another option. But playing with a partner, I think you do get more out of him.
Yeah, and people want to see Jonathan David scoring goals because, as our Gareth Wheeler likes to point out, if you're going to win soccer matches, you have to score goals. And we keep talking about this Panama game being must win, and still no Kyle Larin because of injury and Lucas Cavallini as well, right? So that's why our eyes go to David, because we also see what he's doing in league play and what he has done in the past with the national team, which is why we know he can score. It's just a matter of Herdman getting the best out of him. I want to take you now between the sticks, Hume, and when it comes to goalkeeping, and Max Crépeau obviously doing a great job, did so in the Gold Cup. It comes as no surprise to anyone. We know Milan Borjan missing this window right now because of COVID-19. But in that November window, do you think Herdman goes right back to Borjan? Is he the number one no matter how Crépeau plays, or do you think Crépeau makes Herdman do a little double take?
It's a great headache. It's not something that Canada's had for a very long time. We've not had two goalkeepers who are starters and who are expecting to play. Maxime's been incredible for Vancouver this season. I think coming in clean sheet or not clean sheets, getting a point in Mexico and then clean sheet to get away to Jamaica. Obviously the Gold Cup performances he had, but I think it's along the same lines as Steven Vittoria with Daniil Henry. Tried and tested and somebody he trusts. Milan will for sure, in my eyes, come straight back in, just more so because of his experience. He's played so many games for the national team. He's played so many games in high competition in Europe. And obviously, having played with him, I'm not being biased. And I know Maxime quite well as well. But I think Milan comes straight back in.
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's the number one. It is interesting how you get kind of different things from each goalkeeper. You know, Milan is very tall, obviously, very good on set pieces, great shot stopper. But then with Crépeau, you know, I think we saw against Mexico, you get a goalkeeper who's very, very comfortable with the ball at his feet. You know, you remember that Larrea chance early on in the game? That comes from Max Crépeau picking a diagonal pass into a tight space that allows Larrea to kind of break the press. The Davies chance from Buchanan's cross, that again came from Crépeau stepping into the play, helping him build up. He's very comfortable doing that. So it gives you something a little bit different, I think. But Iain, I'll come back to you on this one. We're not sure on Kyle Larin and Atiba Hutchinson. I'm expecting they're probably not going to be there for this week's game at this point. Are you concerned by that? Is that a loss, or is it something that against Panama you think the team will be okay handling?
It's obviously a loss. They're two quality players, so that's something. When they're in the squad's always going to be better than it is without them. But when you've got Stefan Eustachio and you've got Marc-Anthony Kaye and Samuel Piette and Liam Fraser and guys who can fill the void, they're not kids anymore. Like, Marc-Anthony Kaye has been a standout in the MLS for the last few years, and Samuel Piette's been a mainstay for Montreal for a few years. And when you've got Stefan Eustachio stepping in, and he's touted as one of the best players in Concacaf right now. So as much as I'm going to say this, because I think any team without Atiba Hutchinson in it is a lot weaker. They've got, and John's got a great group of players that he can choose from. It's a massive pool, which is something we've highlighted over the last 6, 8, 10, 12 months. Like we've highlighted that so many times. And I think as much as you're going to miss them, and Kyle Larin's goal scoring, you're going to miss it. But they're fortunate enough right now that they have a squad that's deep enough to fill the void for these games. And fingers crossed, if they're not available for the last game against Panama, hopefully they're available in November.
Hume, I know it's still early into this final window here. 5 games in. At the end will be 6 games. But are you already seeing a battle for third brewing between Canada and Panama?
I think second's still there. I'll be honest with you. I don't think that American team's any great shakes. I've watched their games, and they were okay. They were extraordinarily good in the second half against Honduras, but they've proven they're beatable. Canada should have got 3 points against them. They lost the last game. It's one of those. Like, I genuinely think Mexico, obviously they're the firm favourites to qualify, even with dropping the points against us. Well, dropping points against us gaining points against them. I think anything from second down is available. And okay, I even think, like, I was disappointed watching the other day, coming away with just a point against Jamaica. So, like, these are things that people have to take into context. Like, we used to go away to Jamaica and hope not to lose, because they were on even keel with Canada for years and years, and we always thought that we were going to be fighting for, like, that old 4th spot and trying to get into the playoff with teams like Jamaica. So not beating them in Jamaica, I was upset, because I thought it was there for the taking, because no disrespect to them, they're not a very good side in comparison to what they have been. And when they're missing the likes of Antonio and Bailey and guys who are real match winners, I thought it was definitely there for the taking, with us having Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David and Jonathan Osorio and guys in the squad who can win games. And yeah, I think anything from second place down, not just with Panama, but Costa Rica will come up again, and Jamaica no doubt will get a run of form together. I genuinely think that any of those spots are up for the taking, and with our squad, I'm a little bit upset that we're not in second place right now, because I think we should be there.
Well, yeah, this is the debate that's kind of happening, I think, after the Jamaica game. Like, there are some people, and I'd probably put myself in this category, who are okay with the point and okay with the way Herdman's kind of approached the 2 games. Others, maybe feel it's a missed opportunity, maybe 2 drop points. Do you think, Iain, that with the benefit of hindsight, would you have done anything differently against Mexico to preserve players for Jamaica? Or do you think Herdman mostly got it right, and it was just a case of leaving 2 points on the table there?
100% got it right. The performance from the team and playing your strongest team as possible in the Azteca is you have to. Like, there's no question about it. That's the one game of this window that they had to go out there all guns blazing, because you can't go out there and come away thinking, oh, well, we could have done this, should have done that. You go to the Azteca and you try and get something, and they did, and they could have got more.
Yeah.
Again, I know it's tough with the short turnarounds between games. I possibly maybe would have played as similar team to what played in the Azteca and work them as hard as they can and just try and get points on the board. Because when you're back home, you've got the fans there. You've got the atmosphere. I know Panama will have fans there, but if you keep the ball rolling, you got the great performance and result against Mexico. Could have and should have been more. Then you go to Jamaica, who's a team they're wavering right now. I don't think they're a very good side. They're missing a lot of players. And they had no fans there, so there's no carnival atmosphere. It was definitely a 3 points there for the taking.
Yeah, true.
And then you get back to BMO with the fans there. You've got 6 points on the board. Okay, you know what? We can rest a few players. They'll be on the bench if they need to be used later on. Again, it's easy for me to grumble here because these are circumstances I was never in. We were never going into games like this believing we were going to come away with wins. We'd go in there and fight as hard as we could and hope to come away with the best. Now these guys are going in there and people are scared of them. So when you go in there and you take your foot off the gas a little bit, like Jamaica, I know I've stated a couple times, they weren't very good. But on the same, we didn't play very well. We defended very well for the most part. But I definitely think that was a couple points drop. But John Herdman approached it the right way. I maybe would have done a little bit different, but that's me. I'm not the national team coach, so I haven't got that at my disposal. So they're going to go into Wednesday. I know for sure that everyone's going to be pumped. I know the fans are going to be pumped, and it's definitely 3 points there. And if you'd have given us, like we said on the Mexico game broadcast, if you'd have given us 4, 5, 6 points, 7 points through this window, you'd be happy with it. So it's there for the take, and you come away with 5 points after 3 points in BMO.
Yeah.
Hume, great stuff. I'm going to be sending a decorator over to your house to fill up that wall behind you for next time. As you talked about home games, 3 straight home games for Canada. The magic number, of course, is 9. 9 points, right? So after Panama and Toronto, you have the November games, which will be in Edmonton against Costa Rica, Mexico, right here on OneSoccer. Panama, they're no slouch. Fresh off a win against the Americans. Things are not well in the land of stars and stripes. Paul Tenorio of The Athletic joins us next to discuss on OneSoccer today. Pleased to have on the show for the first time from The Athletic, Paul Tenorio. Welcome. Andy Ollie's still with you. We want to dive into the U.S. men's soccer team, Paul. You cover this team extensively, and I feel like the word I want to use between both windows, actually, the one in September and even now, it feels like yo-yo. Things are going really bad, then things are going really well, and I feel like we're now on the yo of the yo-yo, down back again with the United States. What's the current temperature after that loss to Panama?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very reactive qualification cycle in general. I think that's kind of the nature of fans in general. But with this team, considering the failures of 2018 still hovering over the program, every loss is amplified. Every poor result is amplified. You look at the draw in El Salvador, that was treated like a loss. The draw against Canada at home, that was treated like a loss. And so an actual loss on the road to Panama, pretty cataclysmic. And I think the performance was not great either. It wasn't just that they lost, it's that they looked so bad doing so. So the atmosphere around the team as far as fans is incredibly negative. When you talk to those in the group, the players, the coaches, they claim that they're, able to tune that out, that they're kind of moving on to the next game. They watched the game back. They understand it was a really poor performance, but they believe that the positive of these 3 games in 7 days is that it gives you a chance to rebound immediately tomorrow night against Costa Rica.
Do you think it's a little bit of an overreaction, Paul? Because obviously I understand the disappointment in the result and in the performance, but you can also look at it in the sense that home games are really going to be what decides the US's fate here, or at least you can make that argument. And the Costa Rica game is a much bigger one. If they come out of that, they're still, as far as I can see, pretty well set up in terms of qualifying for the World Cup. Do you think it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, the way, the sheer amount of negativity coming out of that Panama game?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I do, but I think it's kind of the nature of the beast with this team. And yeah. You're right. If they win if they beat Costa Rica, they're going to be in second place in the qualification table, at least in second place, potentially tied for first in goal differential. So things won't be so bad coming out of the cycle if they get that win. But certainly the pressure now on that performance against Costa Rica has gone up. It's amplified. And this isn't a great Costa Rican team. They're very, very old, but they're as confident as they're ever going to be. They're coming off of a win. They're going to come out and probably play in a very low block, defensive minded. They see the formula that Canada used to great effect. They've got some wingers capable of transitioning. And so if we get into this game tomorrow and it's the 25th minute, the 30th minute, and it's 0-0, I think the murmuring in the crowd is going to start. Right. The pressure is going to start to go out onto those U.S. players. That's the scary part of what happened in Panama, is that momentum from the Jamaica win was lost completely. And now that mood that's kind of whirling around this team has the potential to really amplify itself during tomorrow's game if they're not able to get an early lead and start to create some positivity again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a very vocal fan base and a very easy target, Paul, as we all know, is a lot of times you just end up looking at the head coach. And we've had the conversations even here on the show, right? But I'm curious to know, your opinion, or if you're hearing any chatter within inner circles, like what's the reality that Gregg Berhalter would actually lose his job in 2022 if a result doesn't go their way? Or is he the guy that they're going to ride right into the very end no matter what?
I think that, certainly situations could change. If they lost to Costa Rica and then lost both games in November, maybe at that point, you look at the standings, you see where the U.S. is, and maybe the powers that be at USSoccer would start to have a conversation because you have that natural break between the end of November and the qualifiers in January. But any conversations at this point would be so reactive, so over the top. Gregg Berhalter has been working with this group for a long time. Yes, it was one loss. It wasn't a great performance, but they're still sitting in second place in the table. I think we're a long way from talking about the job security of Gregg Berhalter. But then again, what is a long way in qualifying? Like I said, the next 3 games could go extremely poorly, and maybe those conversations become a reality. But I think right now, this is Gregg Berhalter's team. The intention is for Gregg Berhalter to be there, going into the World Cup in Qatar. Certainly the expectation is to get to the World Cup. And I think, we'll see once again, I think the more likely outcome is the U.S. wins tomorrow night against Costa Rica. The pressure drops down again until the next cycle, and then it's home against Mexico, and then everything gets ramped back up again based on whatever happens in that game.
Berhalter came out and said before the Panama game, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something along the lines of, if the competitiveness and the intensity isn't right, we'll get our asses kicked by a team like Panama. And that seemed to kind of chime with something that Landon Donovan said recently, where he seemed to kind of insinuate that maybe the players playing for the US doesn't mean as much to them as it has done to past generations. Maybe is there a competitiveness problem from your perspective, Paul, with this group of players?
I think it was kind of poorly phrased by Landon Donovan. I don't think it's about it meaning less to play for the U.S. I think you can see that these players care. I mean, I think I would like to see Landon say that to Tyler Adams' face, or Ricardo Pepi, who was kissing the badge after he scored and chose to play for the U.S. over Mexico, who talked about the importance of identity and what it meant to him to play for the U.S. I think what maybe is a little bit different in this group is there isn't as large of a chip on their shoulders as there was in past generations. In past generations, a lot of these players had to prove that they were worthy of, being considered good players because they were American, that they had to prove that American soccer was good, was worth it. I think that's kind of what's driving the Canadian national team now, right? To say, hey, we belong and we are as good as you are. And with this U.S. team, a lot of these players don't have that chip in the same way. Certainly they still are up against it in Europe, having to prove they're worthy of playing for their clubs, but their clubs are clubs like Chelsea and Dortmund and Juventus, pretty darn big clubs and pretty darn big transfer fees around these players. And so it's a little bit different. It's not about having to show that you are worthy of attention or that you're, as good or better than Mexico. And so I think in that way, maybe the attitude and the approach of this player group is a little bit different, but I don't think there's a competitiveness problem. I don't think there is a desire to perform for the U.S. problem. I think it's an experience problem. I think these players are learning the level it takes to be competitive in every single game. And I also would point out that these players are going through a qualification cycle that Landon Donovan never experienced. He never had to play 3 qualifiers in 7 days. He never did. This is the first time that these national teams are going through triple game windows. And so load management, the physical demands on these players, it is a notch higher than what Landon Donovan had to go through. And there is a factor there that's real. And agree or disagree with Gregg Berhalter's decision to rotate 7 players, he never would have to make that decision 4 years ago or 4 years before that. And he won't have to make that decision in November. So, I think that's playing a pretty big role for every national team in this qualification cycle, but certainly for the U.S. who have taken kind of an aggressive stance on trying to prepare for these 3 games in 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is kind of apples and oranges, I guess, when you're trying to compare the 2 eras. They really are just so different. So to just focus on this one then, Paul, what would you say, though, is the biggest question facing this team?
Can they break a team down in a low block? Can they break a team down that gives them the ball and says, okay, we'll let you have it. Now show us that you can beat us. This U.S. team has shown that they are capable of scoring goals in transition, of pressing and forcing turnovers and moving quickly toward goal. When you have players like Weston McKennie and Tyler Adams, Brendan Aronson, it fits really well. Paul Arriola, Tim Weah. These are players who like to get out and run and press. But when you see that Canada game, you watch it back. When you look at the first half against Jamaica, when they're dropping in low and organized and are saying, okay, show us what you can do. The U.S. hasn't been able to score goals that way. It's 8 consecutive games now without a goal in the first half. A lot of these goals have come in transition moments or on, through set pieces. And so for me, that's the big question. Do they have the players who can knock the ball around, create space and create opportunities against organized defensive teams? And that's really important to know, because the odds are for the rest of the cycle, when teams come to the United States to play games, you're going to see them play in a low block, organized, and look to transition. And that formula was used very well by Canada. The first half went very well for Jamaica until they lost a little bit of their discipline in the second half. And I think we'll see that against Costa Rica, and especially when Christian Pulisic is not playing, especially when Gio Reyna is not playing. But even when they're on the field, I think that question remains. So for me, that is the thing that I'm most interested to see out of this U.S. team in Concacaf qualifying. I don't think it's an issue when you get to the World Cup. I don't think any team is looking at the U.S. at the World Cup being like, oh, we need to sit in the low block. But certainly I think, for Concacaf qualifying, we'll see, can they break down those defensively organized teams.
Well, and another big part of the solution to that in the past couple of wins, at least, Paul, has been Ricardo Pepi, obviously. Is that centre-forward job, is that his to lose now? And do you think he's a player who's headed on the same kind of trajectory as Pulisic and McKennie and Adams?
You hope so if you're U.S. fans. I mean, it's, certainly he shows real potential to be a player who can go to Europe and be successful. He's very, very young still. So he's only played a couple national team games. So I'm trying to just kind of calm the hype down a little bit. But, yes, it's his position to lose. Yes. And Gregg Berhalter talked about the reason he didn't start in Panama. He's played a lot of minutes for Dallas. They're not taking him off the field, understandably so. But for the U.S. right now, they've been looking and looking and looking for someone who they can count on to score goals. And that is what Pepi does really well. He's not going to be as involved in the buildup. He's not really that type of striker, but he has a really good knack for getting into the right spaces. And even more importantly, you give him a few chances, he's burying them at a very high rate. And that's what the U.S. has been lacking. So really, really, really bright start to his international career. But and I do think he'll move to Europe sooner than later. But I'm not ready to kind of declare him as the top striker yet. He's 18. Maybe he'll get there. Hopefully he'll get there. But for now, it's kind of managing expectations with Ricardo Pepi.
And so apologies there, Paul, that my dog, it is kind of like the American, crowd there, right? Sometimes they're happy, sometimes they're not. And clearly she just wanted to express herself in that particular moment based on what you were saying. But great stuff, Paul. Really appreciate you coming on. Really hope this is not your last time. The first of many appearances on OneSoccer today, Paul Tenorio of The Athletic.